There's a strange irony in the process of discovering yourself. It rarely feels like discovery. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like standing in the middle of your own life and not recognizing anything familiar. And yet, this is exactly where transformation begins. The polished, motivational narratives we often see make self-growth look clean and uplifting. But the truth, it's messy, it's raw, and most of it happens when no one is watching. Today, I want to talk to you about the real emotional stages of self-discovery, the ones nobody really talks about. These are not the linear, wake up one day and decide to be better moments. These are the in-between phases, the uncomfortable transitions, the internal battles that shape you far more than the winds ever could. This journey isn't about fixing yourself. It's about finally listening to the parts of you that have been whispering all along. So let's start with the first, often overlooked phase. The quiet discontent. Stage 1. The quiet discontent. This is where the journey begins, but not with fireworks. It starts in silence, in stillness, in a subtle ache that doesn't quite have a name yet. You might not even realize it's a stage at all. For most people, the quiet discontent creeps in slowly. You start to feel emotionally dull, creatively uninspired, socially drained. Everything in your life may appear okay on the surface. You've got the job, the relationships, the goals you set years ago, but something just feels off. This stage is not dramatic. It's not the breakdown. It's the phase before the storm, and that's what makes it so tricky. You're not sure if you're ungrateful or just stuck. You start to question if this is all there is. You wonder why your successes don't feel fulfilling, why your dreams feel quieter, why you feel like a visitor in your own life. People around you might say, "You should be happy," and that makes it worse, because now you start feeling guilty about your discontent. You start doubting your right to feel unsettled. You try to suppress it. You try to push through. But underneath, your soul is tugging at you. It's whispering that something needs to change, but it hasn't told you what yet. And that's the most isolating part of this stage. The discontent isn't loud enough to explain, but it's constant enough to haunt you. You start questioning your identity. Are you really the person you've been pretending to be? Do you actually believe in the things you say you do? Or have you just been moving through life on autopilot? This stage demands silence. Not external, but internal. It requires you to tune into the quiet voice beneath all the noise. To admit that something doesn't feel right, even if you can't yet name it. And that's hard, because society doesn't give us language for this phase. We're taught to power through discomfort, not to sit with it. But this is where the seeds of change are planted. You might start withdrawing from things you once loved. You may outgrow certain friendships without understanding why. You may find yourself daydreaming more about escape, about reinvention, about freedom. You're not broken. You're waking up. Slowly, painfully, truthfully. The quiet discontent is the most dangerous stage to ignore because it doesn't shout. It waits. And if you don't respond to it, life will eventually escalate it into something louder. A crisis, a collapse, a turning point you can't ignore. But if you choose to listen now, even if you don't have all the answers, you open the door to the next stage. And that's when things get uncomfortable in a new way. But before we go there, I want you to sit with this. Ask yourself, where in your life do you feel quietly misaligned? What parts of your daily routine feel like a performance? Who are you when no one is expecting anything of you? And when was the last time you felt truly alive? These questions won't give you answers immediately. but they're the beginning of a conversation with your true self. And that self, buried under years of expectations, roles, and survival mechanisms, is still there, waiting, watching, ready. Now let's move to the second stage. But before we do, remember, the quiet ache you feel isn't a sign you're broken. It's a sign you're paying attention, for the first time, maybe ever. So you've felt it, that quiet ache inside you, the sense that something is off even though you can't quite say what. You've stopped ignoring it. You've started listening. And once you do, something inevitable happens. You enter the second stage, the disruption. Stage 2, the disruption. This is the phase where your inner world starts to rebel against your outer world. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It arrives like an unexpected storm, sometimes slowly with warning signs, and other times all at once. For some, this disruption might look like a breakup, the end of a long-term relationship that you finally admit isn't aligned with who you're becoming. For others, it's a job loss, a creative burnout, a panic attack, or a full-blown identity crisis. Something in your life begins to crack under the pressure of living out of alignment. What makes this stage so hard is that it feels like you're losing control. You're not just questioning things now, you're being forced to. The systems you built to keep your life stable, habits, routines, beliefs, relationships, suddenly feel suffocating. You start to see how much of your identity was built on survival, on pleasing others, on chasing validation instead of truth. You might find yourself angry, irritable, sensitive, emotional. You might start crying more easily, or losing patience with things you used to tolerate. And you wonder, what is happening to me? This isn't the breakdown. This is the shedding. You're shedding old layers, layers that served a purpose once, but have now become armor you no longer need. But shedding doesn't feel like healing. It feels like chaos. Because for a while, you're caught between two selves. The one who kept you safe, and the one who's trying to be born. This in-between state is incredibly disorienting. Your inner voice gets louder, but so does your fear. Fear of change, fear of regret, fear of losing everything that once made you feel secure. The disruption will test you. It will ask you to let go of things before you have anything new to hold on to. And this is where many people stop. They go back. They run from the discomfort. They rationalize, numb out, or convince themselves that things weren't that bad. But going back never really works. Once you've seen the truth, even if it's blurry, you can't unsee it. If you're here right now, in the middle of the mess, know this. You're not crazy. You're not failing. You're not lost. You're unraveling. And that's what healing actually looks like. But there's another layer to this stage, something more subtle and equally powerful. It's when you begin to resent the person you used to be. This resentment isn't toxic. It's clarifying. You start to see how you've been lying to yourself, hiding from yourself, betraying your own needs in order to be liked, accepted, or safe. And this brings us to the third stage. Stage 3, the death of old identity. The death of an old identity doesn't happen in a single moment. It's slow, painful, often invisible to others. But to you, it feels like a personal funeral. You are mourning who you used to be, even if that version of you was built on illusions, insecurities, or outdated dreams. And here's the most unexpected part. This stage feels like grief. Real grief. The kind you go through when someone dies. Because something has died. The roles you played. The stories you told yourself. The masks you wore so well, you forgot they were masks. All of it starts to dissolve. You might wake up one day and not recognize yourself. The things that used to excite you no longer hold meaning. The people you once revolved your life around now feel foreign. Your goals start to blur. Even your sense of time feels distorted. You're floating in an emotional limbo. And yet, this is sacred. This is the cocoon. From the outside, it looks like you're stuck. But inside, everything is being rewritten. Old narratives are collapsing. Old wounds are resurfacing to be seen, not avoided. This is when your subconscious starts purging years, sometimes decades, of unprocessed emotions. Memories you thought you buried resurface. Old pain reintroduces itself. You feel everything more intensely. And it's exhausting. You might try to explain it to people, but they won't understand. You'll hear things like, "You've changed," or "You're being distant," or worse, "You're not the same anymore." And you'll want to scream, "Exactly." That's the point. Because you aren't the same. And you're not supposed to be. You are becoming. But that becoming requires death. The death of personas, of versions of you that were never really you to begin with. And while it's terrifying, it's also a gift. Because this stage is where real honesty is born. You stop pretending. You stop performing. You stop chasing things that no longer align. And in the silence that follows all this death, you begin to hear your own voice again. Not the voice of your parents, your culture, your ego, or your trauma. Your real voice. And it's quiet. At first. But it's clear. This is when you begin to realize that everything you're losing isn't the end. It's space being made. Space for something new. Space for something true. You might not know what's coming next. You might not have a plan. But for the first time, you're willing to admit that the old way isn't working. And that's where power begins. Not in knowing the answers, but in having the courage to stop lying to yourself. So if you're here, grieving your old identity, don't rush. Don't try to rebuild too quickly. Let it burn. Let it unravel. Trust the ashes. Because the version of you that's emerging will be built on truth, not survival.